car is stuck on the other side of some significant traffic issues and will be here as soon as she can be. And I believe she may try to join virtually in the meantime. So she may pop in while we're going. So I think I'm just going to turn it over to you, Chief Sharp.
Thank you for the opportunity to bring the science of hope and share this with you this evening. You know, every day we have an opportunity to improve the quality of life for the people who call our community home. Our employees contribute to that work through the services they provide, the problems that they solve, and the interactions they have with our residents. As elected officials and department leaders, we also influence that work through the priorities that we set, the investments that we make, and the vision that we help create for our community's future. And this is why we believe that the science of hope has such a strong connection to public service and to local government. Hope is much more than optimism or wishful thinking. At its core, hope is the belief that tomorrow can be better than today and that we have the ability to make it so. Much of what we do is ultimately about creating a better future. We invest in infrastructure to make tomorrow better than today. We develop parks, strengthen public safety, support economic development, and invest in our workforce because we believe that those actions can improve our community. We tackle difficult problems because we believe there is a pathway forward, even when that pathway isn't always clear. The science of hope gives us a framework for understanding that process through three simple concepts: goals, pathways, and willpower. We establish goals by identifying where we want our community to go. We create pathways through policies, through partnerships, through budgets, and through strategic decisions. And we demonstrate willpower through the commitment and the perseverance needed to keep moving forward, especially when challenges are difficult or solutions are often take time. Another aspect of hope that I believe is particularly important for those of us in public service is that hope is a social gift. Hope grows through relationships, through the establishment of trust, through communication, and through connection. And in local government, as you know well, trust matters tremendously. Our community looks to its leaders not because they expect an immediate solution to every problem, but because they expect us to listen, to communicate honestly, to work together, and to keep looking for a pathway forward. When people see our local government working together, addressing difficult issues, investing in its employees, celebrating progress, and continuing to pursue a better future, it can strengthen the confidence throughout our organization and our community. And that works internally as well. When our employees believe their work matters, when they understand where the organization is going, and believe that they have a role in getting us there, we strengthen employee engagement, resilience, and organizational culture. We recently had the opportunity to introduce the science of hope to city employees, and the response was tremendously positive. What began as a conversation about hope became a conversation about public service, customer service, workforce development, and the kind of organization and community we want to build together for a better tomorrow. Tonight, we would like to continue that conversation with you. As you hear today's presentation, we hope you will consider the science of hope through several lenses: as elected officials, as organizational leaders, as members of our beautiful community, and as individuals navigating this life. Because ultimately, whether we are setting policy, delivering a city service, helping a resident navigate a difficult situation, or supporting one another as coworkers, each of us have the ability to help someone see that tomorrow can be better than today. Perhaps more importantly, help them see a pathway for getting there. That is the power of hope in public service. I'm very grateful to Minnie Whalen, our local Hope Ambassador, and to Carmen Geyer, our organization's Hope Navigator, for bringing this work to the city of Port Angeles and for joining us this evening. Mayor and Council, thank you for giving us the opportunity to share this with you tonight. And with that, it's my pleasure to turn the presentation over to Minnie and to Carmen.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Minnie and Carmen, for being here.
Thank you. Please join me in expressing our deepest respect and gratitude for our Indigenous neighbors and leaders from Lower Elwha Clallam, Jamestown's Clallam, Quileute, Ho, and Makah tribes for their enduring care and protection of our shared lands and waterways. Thank you also the opportunity to be here with you for the vision of Carmen and Chief Sharp as Hope Navigators, and to the work in partnership with over 65 local entities to lead this work, including the Olympic Peninsula YMCA as the Resilience Project fiscal sponsor. We'd also like to present a signed copy of Hope Rising to your city library, in addition to being able to check out from the North Olympic Library System. You can now have it in your workplace and be able to see it. So the Resilience Project has been helping to build opportunities to support community well-being since 2018, and the research has led us here. In over 2,000 peer-reviewed research papers, hope consistently is one of the strongest predictors of well-being and human flourishing. And well-being is more than just simply being happy. It includes having a sense of purpose, connection, growth, and meaningful contribution in our families, in our workplaces, and in our communities. Hope matters because it helps people envision a positive future and a belief that they can take steps towards it. And I want to be clear from the beginning, this is science-based inclusive framework. We are not promoting a religious or political agenda. We are not talking about wishing or an emotional state. We're talking about what research tells us about hope and applying it as a cognitive, strategic driver in a practical way to help individuals, organizations, and communities flourish. Well-being isn't just the absence of what's wrong or a prescription of what's right. Picture an employee who used to leave work exhausted. Can you imagine? Really depleted. And 6 months in, maybe that exhaustion has eased. At first glance, this might look like success. But let's ask, do they have clear goals? Do they have a path to reach them? Do they have the belief that they have the ability to get there? The answer may still be no. Reducing burnout may get you back to zero, but hope is what moves people forward towards well-being. So what is hope? In this context, hope is not, we hope you have a good weekend, or we hope you have a good time today or this week. It is not an emotion or a wish. As Dr. Chan Hellman says, from the Hope Research Center at the University of Oklahoma, this is hope as a strategy, a cognitive process, and it's something we can act on and cue to practice. In this body of work, hope is defined as the belief that your future will be better than today and that you have the power to make it so. So how do we put this into practice? That's where this hope framework comes in. And it's a simple model, one that's easy to share, easy to learn, and something anyone can start practicing right away. The framework really comes down to 3 parts: goal setting, pathways, and agency. And we'll walk through them piece by piece. First, goal setting. This is the cornerstone of hope theory. A goal is simply the endpoint that we're working towards. Every day, everyone works towards goals. Things we want to achieve, or maybe something negative that we want to avoid. The pathways are a simple mental roadmap, something that you think through, routes, strategies you'll use to reach goals. And just as important, it's the flexibility to reroute when something gets in your way. What we find is that people with high hope are good at spotting potential roadblocks, and they can develop a workable solution to overcoming the barrier. When one path doesn't work, they're able to pivot to another. In fact, hopeful people tend to generate multiple pathways towards their goal, not just one. While on the other hand, people with lower hope tend to struggle here. They have a harder time managing obstacles and have a harder time coming up with backup plans when their first approach doesn't work. And that brings us to the third piece of agency. This is the motivational engine that behind hope theory. Agency is a belief that one has the ability to act independently and make their own choices in that steady underlying confidence that says, I will achieve this. Now I'm going to turn it over to Carmen to provide an example.
Thank you, Minnie. So now we're going to talk about how this hope framework all comes together. And I also want to emphasize something important, that all three aspects have to be present for someone to actually experience the benefits of hope. So, or at least how we're defining it today, right? So it starts with our valued goal, one that's clear, genuinely desired, and measurable. And then next, so that goal is then supported by two mindsets working together. The first is pathways. That thinking of having a mental map of how to reach your goal. So it's along with the ability to reroute, right, when barriers show up. So think of it like driving somewhere for Council Member Carr. So I'm hoping she's utilizing her pathways right now, and we'll get here as soon as possible. But that pathways thinking is what lets you find a new way there instead of just turning around. She's not going to turn around, right? She's gonna keep moving forward.
And Carmen, she is online. She's
yay.
listening in. She's in the meeting now.
Oh, see, that's pathways thinking. She's online. I love it. And the second is agency. So it's a person's belief in their own capacity to act independently and make the choices needed to actually pursue that goal. And here's the key point. If someone has a goal and they even desire to pursue it, but there's no pathway to get there, that's not hope. That's just a wish. And so now I get to share my aha science of hope moment. And I get to be a little vulnerable in a very public setting. This is great. But so over the last couple of years at the Senior Center, we've been experiencing community members coming in off the street, experiencing some sort of mental health crisis, significant life challenges. And so what we found is that volunteers and myself, we wanted to help, but we didn't always feel trained, equipped, or sometimes safe handling these situations. So over a series of months, I started to become frustrated and overwhelmed. And so my solution seemed very obvious to me at the time. And that was, we need another employee at the Senior Center, someone who could deal with all this, right? So someone who can come in that's trained in behavioral health and just swoop in and save the day. So I took that solution to my boss. And so I went to Corey, we need a second employee at the Senior Center. We're having all these problems. The reality of it was there was absolutely no money in the budget for another position. And so Corey could have laughed and said, Carmen, that's just not happening, and just walked away, right? Instead, he didn't rob me of hope. He listened to what I was struggling with, and he helped me recognize that another employee was a pathway, and that's not the actual goal. So then we sat down and we started brainstorming. And so we said, if we can't take that pathway, what are other pathways available to us? And during that time, we also sat down and we said, what were we really trying to accomplish here? What really was the goal? And so the goal wasn't to hire another person. Our goal was to create a safe, compassionate environment where staff and volunteers feel supported and equipped to respond to community member needs when they're experiencing crisis or significant challenges. So once we got clear about that goal, suddenly there were many more ways to get there. And so we identified pathways. So who could help? So we started writing down a list of names. And the first one that came up was Councilmember Miller. And so I reached out to Councilmember Miller And she knows me, and I'm very animated, right? I'm already talking with my hands, and so she knows that I like to move, I like to talk through things, and so she invited me on a walk. So she, knowing that that was a way for me to build nourishment, and so I didn't have to sit down with her face to face and tell her my problems. So we went on a walk. I didn't have to look at her in the eye, and we started brainstorming. The creative juices started flowing, and that gave me time to process my frustrations and struggles and able to think through the problem differently. And then from that conversation and that walk, we then identified organizations in our community who are already doing this work, right? And so who could help us bridge the gap at the center? If the center is not equipped to handle these types of situations, who's already doing that work? And from there, we identified that we need partner organizations. We need to be able to keep our volunteers and staff safe. And we also need to help build resiliency. So we identified Olympic Connect as a community partner already doing this work in our community. So they came out and they did a training with our volunteers, and we learned more about Olympic Connect and how we can help bridge connections. We reached out to Deputy Police Chief Jason Vieta, who came out and offered training to focus on staying safe while working with community members in public-facing environments. And then we invited Minnie Whalen out with the Clallam Resilience Project, and she offered another piece of the puzzle, and that was self-care, well-being, and how to build resilience for staff and volunteers doing the hard work in our community. So in dealing with barriers and agency, so the barrier was real, right? So we didn't have funding for another employee, but a block pathway didn't mean that goal was impossible. Instead of stopping at, we can't afford it, we started asking, what else could we do? So each conversation created another pathway, and each pathway gave me back some agency to move towards that goal. And so my big aha moment in retrospect, right, was I had confused my preferred pathway with my goal. And I thought, if we can't hire another employee, then I can't solve this problem. But Hope helped me see that the goal can stay the same even when the pathway has to change. And my boss demonstrated equally important something that hope-centered leaders don't always have to have the answer or say yes to every request. They can help employees find another way. So sometimes leadership is simply saying, we can't do that, but let's figure out what else we can do. And then in the next slide, I'd like to bring Minnie back up.
Thanks, Carmen. Your experience illustrates how the framework can be brought to life. One of the reasons why the Resilience Project has been invested and interested in this strategy is because hope can be measured as a psychological strength. Researchers have spent decades validating the adult hope scale and the children's hope scale, which measures two essential components of hope. One is agency and the belief that we can achieve our goals, and two is pathways, the ability to find multiple routes forward, even when facing obstacles. So if we can measure hope, we can intentionally build it. And that means hope isn't something leaders wish for. It's something we can cultivate in ourselves, our teams, and our entities. This is well-established research. Organizations like Gallup incorporate hope, and they have done this for about 20 years to report on research on well-being and leadership and thriving. The Washington Healthy Youth Survey has also continued to measure hope because it's linked to stronger mental health, resilience, and academic success and better lifelong outcomes for our youth. Again, this can be taught like leadership or communication. It's a skill that grows with practice. And when leaders build hope, they also build resilience, adaptability, and the ability to move forward while navigating uncertainty. So we've found that it's powerful to recognize the opposite of hope and the process of losing hope in order to understand how we can continue to move the needle towards well-being. We'll now share how the process of the erosion of hope can help us figure out the distinction of how to continue to build hope. So before we move on, I want to make an important distinction about what this slide represents. Hope doesn't simply turn into anger, and this isn't necessarily a straight or inescapable progression of the loss of hope. What we're looking at here and is what can happen as hope begins to erode, particularly when somebody encounters barriers or begins to lose confidence that there's a pathway forward. So let's start with anger. When someone encounters a barrier that matters to them, frustration or anger can emerge. But anger doesn't necessarily mean hope is gone. In fact, it often reveals that there's still energy and commitment. That person is engaged and they still care about the outcome. What may be starting to erode is that their belief that they have a pathway forward. For leaders, that's an important distinction. Rather than simply seeing an angry or frustrated employee, coworker, or even community member, we can be curious about what's behind that frustration. What barrier may they be experiencing? What are they trying to accomplish? Is there another pathway that we haven't been able to see? An example could be a supervisor may notice a staff member pushing back on a decision, maybe a little bit more sharply than usual. That energy is worth paying attention to. It can mean that a person still cares enough to fight for that goal. If those barriers continue and pathways begin to feel more limited, frustration can shift towards the second element down, urgency. Someone may begin to feel that they are running out of options or running out of time. Decision making can become more reactive and fear and anxiety may increase. In the workplace, we may begin to see changes in behaviors or performances. Those issues may still require accountability, but good leadership can also ask what may be happening underneath that. Accountability and compassion don't have to be mutually exclusive. An example may be that a supervisor could notice a staff member rushing a decision that could normally get more thought, or pressing for an answer before all the information is in. That pace can come from discomfort and a search for quick relief, which is not representative of clear strategic planning. As someone begins to believe that there's no viable pathway that remains, urgency can then give way to the next level down, despair. That thinking begins to shift from, I don't know how I'm going to get there, to I can't get there. This is a significant difference. In the workplace, despair may show up as burnout, withdrawal, conflict, or somebody beginning to disconnect from the organization or entity. That goal may still matter deeply to them, but they no longer believe that they can reach it or have a pathway to it. An example may be a supervisor may notice a staff member who stopped raising concerns altogether, not because things have improved, but because they no longer believe raising them matters. This is often the point when we lose someone to burnout, to conflict, or to walking out the door before anyone saw it coming. Eventually, despair can settle into apathy. The thinking becomes, nothing I do is going to make a difference, so why try? And apathy can be particularly difficult for us to recognize because it's often quiet. Anger gets our attention. Apathy silently slinks in, often unrecognized until it's too late. The person who is angry may still be fighting for something that matters to them. The person who's apathetic may have stopped pushing against the barrier altogether because they no longer believe that their efforts will make a difference. An example will be a supervisor could notice a staff member who no longer volunteers ideas, does exactly what's asked and nothing more, and seems checked out, even while physically present. It can look like low performance, but it can be a much bigger and longer story. Here's what we think is important about this slide. This process is not inevitable. People don't necessarily move through these stages in order, and they can move towards hope at any point. A new pathway, a restored agency, a different perspective, or simply a connection to another person can begin to change the trajectory. And that brings us to something fundamental about the science of hope. Hope is social. Our roles as leaders isn't to rescue someone or to solve every problem for them. It isn't simply to hand them our pathway and expect them to follow it. Hope requires agency. Our role is to pay attention, listen, recognize when someone may be struggling, to see a way forward and help create the conditions for them to identify their own goals and pathways. Sometimes the most important thing we can do isn't to remove every barrier, it's to help someone believe that there may still be another way forward. As we've suggested, hope isn't just a workplace concept, it can show up in every corner of our lives. Let's begin with the harder side on the right of this slide and what it looks like when hope is lower. To briefly go over some of the examples on this slide, when hope is lower, there is a stronger correlation for mental health with depression. For physical health, lower life expectancy. For social health, increased criminal activity. For education, dropping out of school. While when we nurture hope, there is a tangible impact to our everyday lives. For mental health, more functional coping. For physical health, higher compliance with treatment. For social health, more civic engagement. And for education, higher graduation rates. Turning it back over to Carmen.
Thank you, Minnie. So now we're going to talk about hope and well-being. But before I get into that, I truly in my heart feel like employees for the city of Port Angeles do an incredible job, right? We're doing the work already. We're showing up and we are giving our best as public servants. I also feel like the Hope Framework can help us lift our community up even more. So through programs like our paramedicine, first responders, customer service, or any employee from the city who interacts with the public. By embedding hope into our work, we aim to break cycles of adversity and open doors to opportunity for employees and community members across Port Angeles. So we pulled data from the Oklahoma Department of Human Services. And what this chart shows is the relationship between hope and well-being, drawn from Dr. Chan Hellman's Hope-Centered and Trauma-Informed Research. So as you can see here, as hope levels rise from low to high, the average well-being scores climb steadily too. So it's more than doubling between someone with low hope and someone with high hope. And it's a clear picture of what the data consistently shows. Hope isn't just a feeling, it's directly tied to how well people are doing in regards to flourishing. And also, I think I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, but just note the massive jump from no or low hope to slightly hopeful. So by taking small, mindful steps as a leader or an organization, or just as a friend in our community, we can help bolster well-being greatly. We don't need these grand gestures or to have a goal to move people from no or low hope to high hope immediately, but we can focus on small, incremental, and mindful changes to make incredible gains. And now we're going to talk about why hope matters in the workplace. And so we just talked about well-being, but let's talk about hope as a strategy, not just a feeling, and why it matters. So you know when your team's synergy is off, right? People are showing up, they don't have energy, they're not engaging, or they just show up differently. So when hope is lower, as noted on the right side of this slide, it looks like disengagement, it looks like burnout, and it shows up as stress, loneliness, and the sense that your employer may be not listening. And that can also be expensive, right? So for our people, for our outcomes, disengagement costs billions in lost productivity. And for city workers, it can mean missed opportunities in connection with coworkers, customers, or making errors in our work. And also if a supervisor or manager has noticed employees having energy dips or less initiative, that's also a loss of hope signal. So on this flip side, when hope is nurtured, what we found is that when teams have hope, you see it in the productivity, right? You see it in that engagement. People are trying to solve problems. They bring that energy. And for city teams, this could mean creative solutions for tough budget years and the resilience to keep going when things get tough. We see better mental health, more emotional regulation and resilience, which keeps people steady when things get hard. And so the good news is that leaders and teams can intentionally grow hope. And in the next slide, Minnie will show us examples of this framework. Oh, it's like one. We're going to get it. Did I go too fast? There it is.
Thank you. Thanks, Carmen. This is a staff-centered example based on research on identifying pathways and reducing burnout in child welfare workers from Oklahoma. Dr. Ferris and her colleagues found that from shifting from organizational goals to personal goals, it helped to build hope, which in turn reduced burnout. So you can see this relationship mapped out in the model on the right hand of this slide. Hope connects to resilience, and both work together to lower burnout, which is what drives down disengagement and exhaustion. And as Carmen mentioned, this can show up in supervision, training, case consultation. The how is how to adapt language and key concepts to hope theory in these spaces. And the why is straightforward and what we've been talking about. Hope may be a viable intervention to burnout and staff turnover. Thank you.
Okay. And so again, we found some more data from the Oklahoma Department of Human Services. So here we see on this slide, those with low hope averaged a 58.5% burnout score, with those with high hope averaged just 32%. So nearly cutting that burnout in half. So the difference isn't that hopeful people have easier jobs. They have more psychological tools to navigate the difficult ones. So while we can't eliminate stress, we can eliminate how we respond to it. So the HOPE framework doesn't remove obstacles. It just helps us identify pathways forward, focus on what we can influence, and make progress. So stress is inevitable, but burnout doesn't have to be. So by intentionally building hope, leaders and employees can foster a more resilient, adaptable teams that are better equipped to navigate challenges together. I hope you like data. There's just more data here. So this next slide shows that hope just isn't good for people. It's also good for business. Again, pulling on data from the Oklahoma Department of Human Services. Back in 2022, they implemented hope-based strategies with more than 6,000 employees. What they saw was a 17% reduction in turnover. And so that's over 200 employees who stayed instead of leaving. So every employee retained means less lost knowledge, stronger teams, and lower hiring and training costs. So using conservative estimates here. So back in, and this is data from 2022, so I can only imagine how much it is now. So that they averaged $28,000 per lost employee, so per replacement. And I think even more for first responders. A lot more. Do you remember? Sorry, I'm putting you on the spot. It's a lot more. I think like double that. Yeah, and so what that translates into is millions of dollars in potential savings. And so what really stood out to me in this is that they didn't achieve this through higher salaries or flashy perks. They intentionally built hope by helping employees reconnect with purpose, identify pathways through challenges, and supported them to believe they could make progress. So investing in hope is an investment in employee well-being, retention, organizational stability, and financial stewardship. And now I'd like to bring up Chief Sharp.
Thank you, Carmen. So up to this point, we've talked primarily about hope at the individual level. But I want to broaden that conversation just for a moment, because hope doesn't exist only within individuals. It can also exist collectively with teams, organizations, and communities. And this is where I think the science of hope becomes particularly relevant to the city of Port Angeles and our organization. Collective hope asks a slightly different question. Instead of simply asking, do I believe I can do this? We begin asking, do we believe we can do this together? From an employee's perspective, collective hope is really about whether they see the same basic elements of hope existing within their organization. Do they believe leadership has established clear and meaningful pathways and goals? Do they believe that the pathways are available to accomplish those goals, and that together we have the ability to navigate barriers when they arise? And do they believe there is a shared commitment or a collective willpower to keep moving toward those goals when things become difficult? What I find particularly interesting is that employees don't necessarily need to know the science of hope or use the terminology to experience collective hope. They simply need to believe that those conditions exist. In other words, collective hope is not necessarily about everyone in the organization being individually hopeful all the time. It's about whether we have developed a shared belief that we can accomplish meaningful things together. And I think that gives us an important leadership question. Do the people who work for the city of Port Angeles believe that we can accomplish meaningful things together? Because if they do, we have something very powerful to build on. So, why does collective hope matter? Because organizations don't get to choose whether they will encounter barriers. We're going to encounter barriers. Budgets tighten, staffing changes, projects don't go according to plan, community needs evolve, emergencies happen, priorities compete for limited resources, and sometimes the pathway we thought would work simply doesn't. Collective hope doesn't eliminate any of those realities. What it can influence is how we respond to them. An organization with collective hope can encounter a blocked pathway without automatically concluding that the goal is lost. Instead, the response becomes something like this: that pathway didn't work. What else can we try? That's why I think of collective hope as being something we practice in calm waters so that it becomes useful and strategic when we reach turbulent waters. And we don't have to look very far to see how this applies to the city of Port Angeles. Our strategic plan identifies meaningful goals around community resilience, resource optimization, housing, infrastructure. Those goals involve limited resources, competing priorities, multiple agencies and partners, and challenges for which there may not be one simple solution. In many cases, accomplishing those goals will require us to adjust pathways along the way. So the strategic plan tells us what we want to accomplish. The science of hope gives us another way to think about the people who have to accomplish it. Can they see the goal? Can they see pathways toward it? Do they believe their contribution matters? And when the first pathway doesn't work, do we collectively believe we can find another? That's where collective hope becomes more than an employee well-being concept. It becomes an organizational capacity. It helps us build a workforce, an organization, and ultimately a community that is better prepared to encounter barriers, adapt, and continue moving forward together. And if we begin thinking about collective hope as an organizational capacity, the next question becomes, what might that look like when we intentionally apply it as a framework for our organization and our community?
Thank you. The research backs this up, that global studies show that hope is one of the single most dominant attribute that people look for in positive leaders, outpacing even trust. And this has provoked Dr. Hellman to continue to explore collective hope as a pathway for organizations, entities, and community well-being. And we on the North Olympic Peninsula are engaging and learning in this work. And we see that collective hope has that same upward trajectory, that the higher the hope that people have, the stronger the community and individual well-being. As you can see, teaching about hope doesn't take a lot of time. It's been about half an hour, 45 minutes for you to learn about it. But like other skills, it only works if we keep reinforcing and sustaining it. It takes ongoing effort and support to continue to have people practice this skill. So to share a little bit of our community timeline, I became a Hope Ambassador in fall of 2024. Around the same time, I talked to Peninsula College President, Dr. Susie Ames, about the science of hope. And she had decided that the Peninsula College would work towards becoming a hope-centered organization. In January of 2026, she brought in Dr. Hellman to train her entire staff over 2 mornings in January, and then had created a vision She said, what would it look like if every door that one of our students and our staff members go to, they're met with hope? And she said, would you like to help bring that to reality? And so for the afternoons that they had done training in the mornings, we hosted some community engagements and found that people were ripe and ready for this opportunity. Over 52 entities participated in January across sector, across geographic range, across the lifespan. Over 92% of the people who were introduced to this work said they wanted to learn more and become engaged in it. Olympic Community of Health decided to help further this work, and they supported a Hope Navigator cohort to become trained, including your 2 city employees here. And they worked with 22 other entities to work on implementing the science of hope in their own organization or entity. So that looks from schools to culture to justice to health facing. And then Dr. Hellman came back just last week and he provided an overview and a training about hope awareness to Sequim School District and became ongoing support for Port Angeles School District as they engage in becoming a hope-centered organization as well. So this momentum is established and is engaged throughout the community across sector. And we'd like to turn it over again to sort of have that conception of where the city of Port Angeles fits in.
Thank you, Minnie. So some of the issues facing Port Angeles are the hard ones, right? So homelessness, housing, public safety, community resilience, and behavioral health. They don't have simple solutions. But a hope-centered approach does not minimize that complexity. It gives us a framework for working within it. We can define where we want to go. We can work towards our strategic plan. We can identify multiple pathways for getting there. We can recognize barriers when they arise. And we continue to build the agency within our organization and community to make progress. So this framework can also influence how we interact with people every day. Whether someone walks into City Hall, they're frustrated, they encounter a first responder during a crisis, or is experiencing homelessness in one of our public spaces, we can ask, as a city, as an employee, what is this person's goal? What pathways or resources are available? What can we do within our role to help them take that next step? So that doesn't mean that the city can solve every problem for every person. It means that we can intentionally create interactions, systems, partnerships, and policies that increase pathways rather than unintentionally closing them. Thank you. And now I'd like to bring up Minnie to close us off.
Thank you for your engagement and time in learning about hope as a strategic pathway for action. You've all been exposed to Dr. Hellman's TED Talk. There's also his website as well. And again, he's not alone as a researcher. He's one that we've adopted because he creates such a simple, possible pathway for us to be able to adopt and adapt this work. And we're not alone here on the North Olympic Peninsula. You'll see Rising Hope Washington is a group of private and public entities working together to bring the science of hope across Washington. That includes OSPI, the OESD, DCYF, a number of other private entities as well. And I want to thank you for working alongside these state and local entities and for using this framework and thinking about it as a strategic lever. If there's anything that I can do to help your learning or continue to help you think about this as a framework, please feel free to reach out to me. Thanks.
Thank you. Are you open to questions if there are any from council? Okay. Are there any questions from council? I also feel like this is one that might be like digested a little bit and then reach out with questions. Okay.
I just ordered my book while I was sitting here. So I'll get back to you guys.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
I don't really have a question. I have more of a comment. I think for me, what really interests me the most about this framework is the idea of the goals, pathways, and agency, and how it can help us move towards the goals in our comprehensive plan and our strategic plan. I think the idea is great. I mean, full transparency, I went through this training last week, and I can see the relevance in a school setting with students and parents. I really appreciate your clarity on like some of the issues we're facing and how this might be a framework. And I think agency is a big part of that, right? Like the idea of not having the willpower to move forward. I also think this intersects a lot with Angela Duckworth's grit research. And I think that's something worth looking at too as a city, because perseverance by itself is, just that. And so like a goal without a will is just a dream, right? Like you mentioned. So same thing. You can be the smartest person in the room, but without perseverance or will, you're not going to accomplish what you want. So I'm interested in how those intersect. And then, but the thing I said last time, just to say it out loud again, is I just want it to be, I mean, it'll be interesting to learn about it from my other perspective too, but like how the city chooses to use employee informed stuff and how that's going to grow. I know we're just in the beginning stages of this, and just something that's sustainable, not creating a new system or another parallel thing that we're already doing, how it integrates into what's already happening. As Carmen said, there's a lot of this that we already do as employees of a public entity or even in any organization, right? The people who work here want to see things happen and goals met. So I think this is a great way. I really hope that like in the future, you guys come back and present to council, whether it's a work session or in one of our meetings, about what we're seeing in the employees and how the framework's actually being used, and how we're like, even as leaders in this work, how we're like adjusting to barriers we find and finding other pathways through those micro goals to reach those ultimate goals. So I really appreciate the thoughtfulness of your presentation, and I just look forward to seeing how this progresses in the coming weeks and months. So that's all I want to say, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Navarro, do you want to say anything? No. Okay. Mark, go ahead.
Thanks for the presentation. As you were giving it, I was thinking that this is really easy for me to see how it is relevant to first responders. No surprise. But then I recall that every time somebody asks me, or tells me rather, I couldn't do your job. And I say, yeah, you could. What do you do? And they tell me what they do. They're a teacher, they're an office manager, they're any number of things. And I say, you exercise discretion. You set rules and boundaries and limitations. You exercise compassion. You make critical decisions. So the reason I say that is because it seems like it's a no-brainer for our first responder personnel, but members of our traditional workforce exercise the same types of decision-making and thought processes and triage. And so I'm just really happy to see this not just offered to whom you might think the traditional audiences and first responders or military members, but to a broader audience and people who can use this just as much as anybody else. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Well, we will look forward to having more conversation, hearing more from you all. And we will take a short break and be back for our regular meeting at 6 o'clock. Thank you all very much. All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Port Angeles City Council. I would like to start by asking, Councilmember Miller is not with us this evening. And I'm wondering if anyone is interested in moving to excuse her.
I move to excuse Councilmember Miller.
Second.
All right. Anyone opposed to the motion to excuse Councilmember Miller, please state your opposition. All right. Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. All right. Can we start with a roll call, please?
Mayor Dexter.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Carr.
Here.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Here.
Councilmember Hodgson.
Good evening.
Councilmember Schwab.
Here.
Councilmember Suggs. Here. Manager West.
Present.
Attorney Sahandi. Here. Thank you.
All right. If you can please stand as you are able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. We are going to start this evening with a proclamation. So I'm going to work my way out. Very good. All right. And I'm going to invite Mark Absher to come down and join me while I read this. Tonight, we are taking a moment in advance of the event to recognize the 25th anniversary of the September 11th attack on the United States. And we have Mark here to, after I read this, I will go sit down, but I will hand him the mic. And he's going to share his personal story of connection to the events of that day. A proclamation in recognition of the 25th anniversary of 9/11. Whereas September 11th, 2026 marks the 25th anniversary of one of the most tragic days in United States history, when on the morning of September 11th, 2001, terrorists hijacked 4 commercial airliners and used them in coordinated attacks across the United States. American Airlines Flight 11 struck the North Tower of the World Trade Center in New York at 8:46 a.m. Eastern Time, followed by United Airlines Flight 175 striking the South Tower at 9:03 a.m. And whereas at 9:37 a.m., American Airlines Flight 77 was flown into the Pentagon in Arlington, Virginia, the South Tower of the World Trade Center collapsed at 9:59 a.m., followed by the collapse of the North Tower at 10:28 a.m. And whereas United Airlines Flight 93, traveling from Newark, New Jersey to San Francisco, California, was also hijacked and turned toward Washington, D.C. After learning of the attacks through calls with loved ones and others on the ground, the 40 passengers and crew members acted with extraordinary courage to resist the hijackers and attempt to regain control of the aircraft. And whereas Flight 93 crashed near Shanksville, Pennsylvania at 10:03 a.m., killing all aboard. The actions of its passengers and crew prevented the aircraft from reaching its intended target. And whereas nearly 3,000 people were killed in the attacks of September 11th, 2001, including innocent civilians, first responders, public safety personnel, military personnel, airline crew members, and passengers. And whereas the City of Port Angeles honors the memories of those lost and recognizes the lasting courage, service, and sacrifice demonstrated by civilians, first responders, recovery workers, members of the armed forces, volunteers, and countless individuals in the days, months, and years that followed. And whereas in Port Angeles, Francis Street Park was renamed 9/11 Memorial Waterfront Park in 2011 following the installation of a recovered steel beam from the World Trade Center. This memorial serves as a lasting tribute to the victims of September 11th, 2001, and to the public safety personnel and private citizens whose lives were taken, while reminding our community of resilience, unity, recovery, and service to one another. And whereas on this 25th anniversary, the City of Port Angeles joins communities across the nation in honoring the victims of September 11th, 2001, and recognizing the loved ones, families, friends, survivors, and communities forever affected by those attacks. Now, therefore, I, Kate Dexter, Mayor of the City of Port Angeles, on behalf of the Port Angeles City Council, do hereby recognize September 11th, 2026 as a day of remembrance in the City of Port Angeles and call upon all members of our community to pause on September 11th, 2026 to remember the innocent lives lost, honor the first responders and all those who answered the call to serve, and hold close the families, friends, and loved ones whose lives were forever changed. May we never forget the victims of September 11th, 2001, and may we continue to uphold the values of courage, compassion, service, and unity that emerged in the face of profound loss. Thank you. Now I'm going to turn it over to Mark. Thank you for being.
Thank you, Mayor Dexter. Thank you all for giving me a few minutes just to share my personal story. Most of you know me, if you know me, as the executive director of the Port Angeles Chamber of Commerce, where I've been doing this for a little over 10 years. It seems like forever. So a long, long time. But previous to this, 25 years ago, I was active duty military, serving about the 25th year of that career. And I was in the Pentagon. I was on the Secretary of the Air Force's personal staff. I was his speech writer, his writer, basically. I wrote all kinds of things besides speeches for him as well. But I was on his personal staff, and we were in the outer ring. They call it the E ring of the Pentagon. You know, the Pentagon is a giant building. And there was about 10 or 12 of us on his personal staff. We were in a vault room for security reasons, because we worked with a lot of classified information. Although I didn't, because I was the speechwriter, public speaking stuff. So nonetheless, we were all together in this room, and I was working on a speech that morning, September 11th. And as a writer, sometimes you get really on a roll, as you're writing. And that was the case for me that day. And so when all my office mates, all the other guys, were calling me into our small conference room saying, Mark, you got to come check out what's going on in New York City. Come check this out. And I'm like, I'll get there eventually. And just knowing how these things generally roll out, I figured I'd catch up on the news later on, because I was working and on a roll, and I didn't want to leave my desk. So they were all in the small conference room, and I was working away, and suddenly, like a bomb went off or something. I didn't know what it was. All I knew was I was basically kind of thrown back. My chair actually rolled back a little bit, and I knew that something wasn't right. This is not normal. This is not good. So I did get out of my office at that point and gathered with everybody else, and we went out into the hallway, and everybody was running to the doors and yelling, "Evacuate, evacuate." So we did. And we all went outside and stood out on the lawn and had no idea what was going on, because it happened on the opposite side of the building from where we were. The airplane went in basically on the west side of the building. We were on the east side by the river, and this aircraft went into the first floor, almost to the ground level, into the dirt basically of the building. And so we could see the smoke and all that sort of thing, but we had no idea. I didn't know it was an airplane, basically. I had no idea. And so we stood around for quite a while, and then finally someone said, guess what? We are not going back in that building today. Everybody needs to just go home. So I took the metro to work every day, and I lived actually in the District of Columbia, not in Virginia or Maryland. And the metros were closed. The metro was not working. The phones weren't working. No phones were working. No metro. So I realized I was going to be walking home, which was about 6 miles away or so. And so I walked away from the Pentagon. As I was walking away, there were 2 more loud explosions. I looked back to see what was going on, and didn't really know, but I found out later it was the 4th and 5th floors that were collapsing down on the fire and everything going on below. And it was a really kind of a strange, almost surrealistic feeling to be a military guy looking back at the great Pentagon, and it's in smoke. It was really strange. So I then walked across the bridge over the Potomac River to the Lincoln Memorial and started walking up Massachusetts Avenue past all the embassies that are located there. I was stopped by some Secret Service agents that warned me to be careful. I'm like, what do you mean be careful? They said, well, you're wearing your uniform and you could be a target. So, be aware. And I just couldn't believe it. Here I was in my nation's capital and a man in uniform of the nation. And I have to watch out, watch my six, So anyway, I finally got home and my kids had been picked up from school and nobody there knew what happened to me. They didn't know if I was alive or dead. So when I walked in, everybody just was yelling, screaming, crying, all that good stuff. And so we did our hugs and all that sort of thing. And then I'd been asked to write a letter to the Air Force from the secretary for his use. And so I sat down and started working, and that was basically my day. And so, and actually I've written speeches about this. I've talked about it for quite a long time over the last 25 years. And the thing that I always go back to is, as it said in the proclamation, we don't want to forget, what happened that day. But the other side is that we also always want to remember how we felt across the country, all of us collectively, in the days following September 11th. The few weeks and months that followed the September 11th were kind of a wonderful time to be an American, believe it or not. I mean, we all felt, that's what I remember, is just feeling a collective unity with everybody else who had also been attacked. We had been collectively attacked as a nation. And in big cities, people were waving at each other like they lived in a small town and knew each other. Everybody was nice to each other. There was no divisions. And so I have this sort of a nostalgic feeling of 25 years ago. These days, with so much divisiveness in our country right now, actually, unkind words between people, I just think our priorities need to be focused on what's important and not on the small things that make us different. We need to celebrate the things that we share. And that's a lot. And the things that we share are the important things. The things where we don't agree necessarily are not necessarily all that important, but we spend a lot of time needling on those things. And I feel like it shouldn't have to take a major catastrophe or a terrorist attack on our country to bring us all together. And yet that was what happened back then. So that's my personal side of the story. And I want to thank the city for taking the time, the effort to memorialize, the occasion. 25 years, it just seems like it was 50 years ago to me. It seems it's so long ago. But anyway, I appreciate the city, making a statement on this topic. So thank you. Happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Thank you very much, Mark. Thanks for being here and for sharing. All right. We will, on that note, move on to late items. Are there late items from staff?
So Mayor and Council, we have two items that need to be mentioned relative to the agenda. First, I want to mention that we did find some Scrivener errors in each of the sets of minutes for this evening, both August 18th and August 25th, and you should see revised copies with those corrections on your dais this evening. Additionally, Council, in the agenda itself on item E5, the recommendation relative to another item, I believe E6 actually carried forward on the recommendation for E5. The recommendation for E5 should read, approve the purchase of the Itron software annual subscription and implementation through Temetra from General Pacific, Inc. in the amount not to exceed $27,048.94 and authorize the city manager to make minor modifications as necessary. Council, that's all we have for late items, just those few corrections. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Sorry, I have a lingering cough and I'm going to try to keep it under control tonight. So, especially if my mic is on. All right, any late items from council? All right, hearing none. Is there anything anyone would like to pull from the consent agenda? Okay, anything? I'm just going to start asking that regularly. Anything anyone would like
Mayor,
to
did
add?
you want to go to public comment?
Oh yeah, I do. Thank you for the reminder. Sorry about that. Not trying to shortchange everyone tonight. Just need to follow my own agenda. All right. So that brings us after late items is the first public comment period of this evening. And just a reminder for folks who are maybe not regulars, first public comment period is limited to items on tonight's agenda, and other public comment will be at the end. I have a few folks signed up here, and if you are joining us virtually and wish to speak to something on tonight's agenda, this is the time to raise your virtual hand. I will go to comments in council chambers first and then go online. So we will start with Tracy Abel. And just a reminder for everyone, please state your name, whether or not you're a resident. If you're in council chambers, the lectern has a timer. We'll keep track of your 3 minutes for you. And go ahead when you're ready.
Hi, Tracy Abel. I live in Port Angeles. Tonight, I am here to speak on the item, the moratorium for AI data centers. I want to start out by thanking you for listening to people. I know we've been sending emails and letting you know that we are concerned about this. I received some very encouraging replies from some council members that made me feel like, you know, we are on the same page in a lot of ways and understand that this is not a good thing for our community. There are so many issues around them. I mean, the water issue, for instance, you know, here in Port Angeles, we are currently under water restriction, which, by the way, I think is a very good thing. Thank you for doing that. Also, by the way, if anybody has authority, the Border Patrol sprinklers keep watering the sidewalk and the driveway. And so I know that that is in violation of that restriction. But anyway, so the thought of using water for a data center is bonkers to me. We are in climate collapse all around the world. I mean, water is a precious commodity. We also are, you know, need to work very hard to have clean air. There's air pollution associated with them. There's sound pollution. There's lots of bad stuff. And I know they talk about, all these jobs. It does not feel like that is a sure thing. I don't think at all that we should be betting on jobs when it's, AI is a speculative thing that's happening right now. It's like a race to the top to see who's going to be the top AI, all these different tech bros and their money, and they're all trying to force it down our throats. So anyway, I think it's a very bad idea to bring that here. The McKinley Mill, it makes me nervous because of the grant funding that they applied for in data center development is, within the parameters of that funding. Another thing that made me nervous is today somebody forwarded me something from a Facebook page, which I am not a member of. I think it's called The Real Port Angeles, but there was a job posting for a senior engineer or something, and it said it was for a data center in Port Angeles with a company called CalCon, Cal with a K. So anyway, I feel like a moratorium is a very good first idea. I mean, I'm glad you're bringing this up, but I think that we really need to work for a code change that would create a permanent ban, because I don't think taking time to sit back and research this more and look at it is going to change anybody's mind and all of a sudden make this seem like a really good idea for our community. So I thank you, and permanent ban, please.
Thank you, Tracy. Just a reminder, no clapping or applause. Though I know particularly on issues like this, people have very strong feelings. Next is Kurt Bear.
I'm Kurt Bear. I'm a resident of Port Angeles, and I'm also going to be speaking about the data centers. I would also be in favor of a very, very strong moratorium on any sort of data center construction or operation in Port Angeles, but probably when the city does its due diligence, I think maybe we need to actually look at an outright permanent ban, at least on large data centers. Obviously, the term data center could apply to something from something very small and inconsequential to something very massive. But the trend these days is to build enormous data centers. I don't even think some of these data centers would fit inside the entire city limits of Port Angeles. They are massive. The other thing is, besides what Tracy commented on, I don't know if everyone's aware or not, but there are proposals in the works at various stages of completion to turn paper mills into data centers all over the country, all over the world. They've been proposed in Finland, other parts of Europe, Ohio, Maine, Texas, Wisconsin. Every one of those places, they're fighting a lot of public outrage and concern about these things. Obviously, what they're going for here is they're going for places that need jobs. You know, paper mills have closed all over the world. People need jobs. Data centers don't provide jobs. They provide a couple of jobs. Most of those will be replaced by robots within a few years, and then there won't be any jobs. So I think we need to really, really not reach for that dangling carrot just to bring economic development at any cost to our community. We definitely need to look at resources. Water is too critical. We can't just open our resources up to development without knowing exactly what sort of benefit we're going to get. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, Daniel England.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, City Council. This is my first time doing this, so I appreciate your patience and you listening to me. My name is Daniel England. I am a former U.S. Merchant Mariner officer. Actually worked down at the Park Responder for a while until MSRC sold it off. Currently, I work in information technology. I want to say I moved up to Port Angeles 2016 after I graduated from the Maritime Academy. And I came up here because of the natural beauty of Port Angeles. I came up here because the air. I came up here because everyone here was good people. You know, I came up here just for the wildlife, for the camping. A data center isn't going to add to that. A data center, as was stated previously, isn't really going to bring us that many jobs. It's not going to bring us any real true economic development. It's not going to help us. It'll help a few. It'll make a few people rich, for sure. But it will not help us as a community. And I hope that the City Council stands with us, the people, and does not allow this. If it is going to, if there is a possibility that it was to go to where the paper mill was, I can just about guarantee you, as someone who's been on the water for most of his life, it's not going to help your local wildlife. That is for darn sure. Especially with the pollution, especially with the heat, your local wildlife is not going to do well. And as we all know, as I have dodged many of, a lot of us out here like crabbing. A lot of us out here like seeing the dolphins. A lot of us out here like fishing. And that's not going to help any of us at all. So I hope that you stand with the people and you work with us to not bring this. And yeah, I appreciate your time. Thank you all.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else in council chambers? Go ahead. Looks like we have one more. We have one hand online, so we'll take one more in council chambers and then go online.
John Ralston, City of Port Angeles. talk about a couple of things on the agenda. I guess 5 and 6. I'm wishing that when you're making the notes in the agenda that you put a monetary number besides them. A lot of these items that are on the agenda tonight where you're purchasing things, et cetera, you do have numbers on them. And I see no reason why you shouldn't have that on items 5 and 6. Otherwise, people will have to go to the agenda packet and not everybody is going to download that and review it. That's the only reason why I'm asking for it. On item number 8, certainly Tesoro is a very valuable asset in the community or whoever's doing the oil work down there. But I think it's important that when the city continues with some discussions with all the parties that are involved, that the city has representation from somebody that's very familiar with the valuation of the oil and gas business, an expert in that arena. And when I go back and I talk about numbers, on J1, 2, and 3, there are no numbers that could have easily been put in those sentences right there. So somebody can actually see rather quickly what those items are costing. And I don't know if there's going to be slideshows tonight. I'm guessing there is. So I'm going to speak briefly about slideshows as I have in the past. I realize why you don't have slideshows in your agendas. They're usually not, in the full agenda packet because they're not done by the time the packet is published on Fridays. So as an alternative, or a couple alternatives, I would make those slideshows available outside where you have your agendas, and just to have a half a dozen of those available for audience members. The second thing I would recommend that after you do your slideshows, either on Tuesdays, when I'm sure that the slideshows are done, they be posted online right on Tuesday, or shortly after your meetings, that they're posted online connected to the agenda packet. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I have, one more. Okay.
Good evening, Nimo Calloway, the City resident. Real quick, I do strongly support that moratorium, hopefully moving towards a ban. And also I strongly support that letter of opposition to the roadless rule. But today I think I'd mostly like to talk a little bit about that 9/11 proclamation that we had earlier. We know that 9/11 was impactful for us as a community, as a country. It had been 25 years and we're still talking about it. And to that end, I'd like to bring forward, after 9/11, we invaded a couple countries for basically no reason. We killed a bunch of people for basically no reason. There were 430,000 civilian casualties in the Middle East in the aftermath of 9/11. That is 160 times as many people as were killed in the Twin Towers. That is not including all of the people we killed in Desert Storm 1 and 2 before 9/11 even happened. This is what happens when you support overseas imperialism. This is what happens when you fund a military that moves into other countries and kills civilians. Sometimes some of our people get killed back. That is what it is. Every single month, another 3,000 people die in Palestine from US-supported troops in Israel. We give them the weapons, we give them the ammunition, we give them the technology. They kill another 9/11's worth of people every month. As we move into this new era, people have started waking up to these issues of US imperialism overseas. The city has power to help with this problem. The city can tell the state that they support boycott and divestment and sanctions of these companies. The city can tell other counties, other cities, it can tell the state government, it can tell the federal government that we don't want to be supporting these overseas wars. We know how impactful 3,000 civilian casualties, how impactful 3,000 civilian casualties can be. It happens every month overseas because of what the US does. It happens over and over and over. And we act like the one time they hit back is some horrific accident, some horrific incident that never could have been envisioned, that we couldn't do anything about. And we do it to them all the time, over and over. And we need to stop doing it. There is no reason for our troops to be in the Middle East. They can just leave. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll go to LC online.
Okay, I think I've got it unmuted. Laurel Cripe, I'm a resident of the city of Port Angeles.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I can hear you. Let me get my phone. Sorry, I'm a little behind.
You don't need to time me. I'll be very short.
Okay.
I just want to support the moratorium on data centers in the city of Port Angeles, and I would also hope that that would move to a permanent ban for all the reasons, environmental and otherwise, that people have stated. I guess the one thing I would add is they talked a little bit about the small economic development aspect. In the comprehensive plan, everywhere that it talks about economic development, that's with the caveat that it's sustainable and environmentally sound. So, you know, there's a bar to get over, not just any environmental or economic development there. And so the other thing I would just add is, I know the city can write letters and urge, as Nemo was just talking about, urge other entities, government entities, and I would like to see the city write a letter to the Clallam County urging a moratorium and a ban in Clallam County at large. So that's all I've got on that. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, I understand there's one more in council chambers, so we'll go ahead and do that and then move on.
Thank you for letting me speak without putting my name on a list. My name's Karen Unger. I live in the city of Port Angeles, and I'm here about this data center. I'm a little surprised that this is even something that anyone here would consider for our community. I don't know if any of you on the city council are in favor of such a thing. And if you are, I don't think you should be on the city council because you have no concerns about our city or our community or our environment. There is no upside to having a data center, just like McKinley Paper. I don't know if everyone here has been transparent about what the plans are for that location. Certainly not a data center, but there are other somewhat heinous plans to also contribute to the destruction of our community. And I think that's kind of been brushed under the table because the city seems to think that there's going to be a huge tax base from these people taking over the mill and then making substances that are poison to everyone. And so Port Angeles has never been a booming economy. That's not the history of this city. And I don't know why people seem to think that that's the goal we want to pursue. When that, if you want to live in a booming community, go back to New York City or go someplace where that's the lifestyle. But that's not the lifestyle that people seem to be interested in, come out here to live. And I think as the city council, you have an obligation and responsibility to the community, and not just to some people who come from someplace else and say they're going to give us jobs, because they never do, never works out. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We're going to end the first public comment period, and we have the second public comment period at the end of tonight's meeting. So we will move on to the consent agenda now. Thank you for the reminder before. And we had assessed that there was nothing anyone wanted to pull. Is there anything anyone would like to add? Drew?
Yeah, I'll just go down my handy dandy list. G1, second amendment to the 2026 budget, conduct second reading and adopt ordinance.
Any opposition to that? Okay, go ahead.
J1, contract award, alternative mitigation for landfill seawall PSA 2026-11, award and authorize.
Any opposition to that? None? Okay.
J2, equipment purchase, light ops excavator 5903, approve and authorize.
Any opposition to that one? Okay. Anything else?
J3, equipment purchase, water division Ford F5502 yard dump truck number 5704, approve and authorize.
Any opposition to that? Sorry. Okay, thank you. I will go ahead and attempt to read the consent agenda. The minutes from August 18th, actually really quickly before do I need to add language that these are the corrected minutes as presented tonight? It's just Scrivener errors.
That would be nice if you could speak that into the record. I'll note it in my minutes.
Okay, great. So the consent agenda is the corrected minutes from August 18th, 2026 and August 25th, 2026. Expenditure report between August 8th, 2026 and August 21st, 2026 in the amount of $3,964,398.42. CON-2025-39 Francis Street Sewer Trestle Repair WW0518 award. Light operations software license agreement with Surveillant Technologies, Inc. Meter reading software subscription. Westlaw subscription agreement for access to legal research platform. Change order 01 LWA intake structure hydraulic system CON-2024-28. Consent to sublease extension and acceptance of payment agreement. Second amendment to the 2026 budget, including the second reading. Contract award alternative mitigation for landfill seawall PSA-2026-11. Equipment purchase light ops excavator number 5903. Equipment purchase water division Ford F5502 yard dump truck number 5704. Any comments, questions, or a motion to approve?
Mayor, I do have a point of clarification.
Okay.
On item J1, council will note that there's a small discrepancy relative to the amount that's been mentioned in the recommendation versus the amount that is the maximum not to exceed versus the amount in the scope of work. I think to be safe, let's go ahead and ensure that the not to exceed amount is expected to be 200,000, consistent with the other two references. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
I move to approve the consent agenda as read and amended.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the consent agenda as read and amended. Any opposition to the motion, please state your opposition. Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. And that brings us to, excuse me 1 minute. Item I1, right? Yes, okay. That is the item that many of you are here for, potential data center moratorium or similar alternatives. And I'm going to turn it over to Nathan in a minute.
So Mayor and Council, this item is before you tonight as Council actually brought this up at the August 18th City Council meeting. And it was approved by consensus that Council actually add an item to a future agenda, which this is the future agenda, to discuss a moratorium on data centers in the city of Port Angeles. The city of Port Angeles is not alone in this interest, recognizing that we see a pattern occurring across the nation, even across the world, relative to demand for data centers. This includes a path in Washington State for a great deal of demand as well. And I think it's a type of use that we can expect to see becoming more popular and having more demand. So for the city of Port Angeles, recognizing we currently have no applications for data centers in our jurisdiction, now is an opportune time to be discussing this matter. And we're going to, at this time, turn it over to Attorney Sahandy, who's going to provide a short presentation on data centers.
Thank you. City Manager West, good evening. Mayor and City Council, as City Manager West indicated, this presentation is in response to council request and intended to provide a broad overview of council's ability to implement a data center moratorium. This is going to be a short presentation, so it'd be great if we could keep questions to the end. It'll probably be about 8 minutes, and we do have other staff here to answer questions at the end should they arise. So next slide, please. to level set for everybody, there's a question of what exactly is a data center. And the simple way of thinking of a data center is that it's a storage facility. They house servers, storage for backups, networking equipment, and they require certain elements to work. So they require power, cooling, security systems with the goal of ensuring that there is continuous, reliable, and safe data processing for whoever the intended beneficiaries are. Data centers can actually be any size, as was referred to earlier. They can be as small as something that is adjacent to a single business and intended simply to support that one business. They can be in clusters and business parks. The photographs you see on the slide on the left there are data centers in Tukwila that basically look like business park buildings, all the way to the ones that are the source of great concern right now for a lot of folks, which are the hyperscale facilities. And you can see a photo of that in the Oregon picture there. Next slide, thank you. And as was mentioned, there are a lot of ways of defining what a data center is for our community. So it is possible for us to adopt a definition that is quite simple, as the first example up there, all the way to an extremely detailed definition that really speaks to things like power usage, footprint, resource needs, etc. So that is one of the levers that City Council has for being able to address the way that such a project, if permitted, could manifest in the community. Next slide, please. Also for level setting, what exactly is a moratorium? So a moratorium is not a ban. It is a temporary pause for a purpose. And the purpose would be for staff to be able to prepare, for the community to have conversations, to be able to really understand all the potential impacts and all the ways that we might want to amend code and processes to be responsive should there be an application for a data center in the community. They are generally done for 6-month periods. The RCW says that the max period is 6 months. However, they can be renewed. So the council could adopt a 6-month moratorium and then, if needed, continue to have hearings and findings of fact that justify it being extended until the goals of the moratorium are met. They can be declared with or without a public hearing. If they are declared without a public hearing, one has to be scheduled within 60 days of the action. Next slide, please. So here are some examples of other cities in the state of Washington that have adopted moratoria, which I think is the plural of moratoriums. And I apologize if it's hard to see, but what it shows is that this has been an issue that a number of cities have faced. And in the far right column, you can see in some instances, the moratoria have expired, which means those communities have probably adopted ordinances and processes that are geared to however they want to prohibit or shape these kinds of projects in their communities. And then some you will see with the green dots on the far right are active, meaning that those are cities that are currently in the midst of trying to understand the situation and address their codes and have the processes that they want to undergo before they are ready to accept any applications. Next slide, please. Now, as things stand right now, if there were to be an application, if you are curious where a data center would be sited, now keep in mind, we don't have a definition of a data center, so it's a little bit hard to exactly to say exactly how it would be treated, but this is how we think it would fall out for the different zones that are in the city right now, with the N's representing places where they would be not allowed at all, and the C's representing the zones in which they would be a conditional use. Some of the policy considerations that would be looked at if there were to be a moratorium are the potential pros and cons of having this use. And when you look at examples from other cities, this is not an exhaustive list, but these are some of the things that come up quite frequently. On the areas of concern, as has been mentioned earlier tonight, energy use, water use, heat produced, noise, potential e-waste, and environmental impacts writ large are concerns. And benefits that have been mentioned are things like tax revenue, infrastructure and community improvements that some of these companies will participate in, jobs, and community programs are examples of things that are brought up as the potential positives of such projects. Next slide, please. Now, the City Council and the various bodies that we have provide a lot of levers for ways to influence what the process would look like if there were to be an application for this kind of use. You'll see quite a number of I would say, potential levers and quite a few under development standards. Again, this is not intended to be an exhaustive list, but it gives you a sense of the kinds of things that we would look at if we have a moratorium to figure out what are the impacts and how would the city want to create an environment for getting the kinds of projects that you think are truly beneficial for this community. Typically during a moratorium, there's a work plan, and these are examples again of the elements of what a work plan for staff could look like during a moratorium in exploring the potential impacts and again what the steps could be for making recommendations as to code changes and other process changes. And finally, potential next steps. Again, not an exhaustive list, not in any order. Here are some of the things that council could decide tonight. As far as next steps, it could be other ideas that you develop in the course of the conversations, but these are the types of things, again, that we could do as next steps. And that is the end of the presentation.
All right. We have one hand already. I imagine everyone's going to want to weigh in on this. Navarra, go ahead.
I have a couple questions before getting into my thoughts. My first question is, it might be helpful to actually have the presentation back up, but in the section that talked about the different zones in the city, many people during public comment mentioned the potential siting of the former McKinley Mill as probably the most logical place a data center would be because of the infrastructure. What zone is that mill in? And is it in a zone that would be vulnerable to the potential siting of a data center, or would it not be allowed?
I think
good evening.
That's going to answer our question.
Mayor and council. So the McKinley Mill is located in the industrial heavy zone. And right now,
real fast, Ben, can you introduce yourself for those in the audience who don't know who you are?
Hello, everybody. I'm Ben Broderick. I'm the planning supervisor for the city of Port Angeles. So the mill is an industrial heavy, and it is listed as a conditional use. It's not defined in code, but it is defined as something that is adjacent that would have to go under review.
Thank you. I think that's very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And then my next question, probably less for you, Ben, but I could be wrong, is on the last slide about next steps. And so I guess my question, and I really appreciate Latricia bringing this forward on talking about a moratorium. I think it's really valuable when we're transparent with the community about what we're thinking about doing instead of having it be so vague. So I really appreciate that. My question is, what is the value of a moratorium? Like, I guess here's where I'm going with this. Is there the potential to direct staff to work on some of these next steps without having a moratorium and to instead have a proposed date to bring something back to council or to planning commission or what have you?
I can try. So the benefit of having a moratorium in place is that it essentially freezes the ability of anyone to apply during that period of time that you're doing the work, so that you can really be prepared when an application comes in, that you've thought through all these issues, you have prohibited what you want to prohibit, you've given, if you want to have a max number of square feet, max amount of energy, if you want to make sure that it's closed loop water systems, so our very precious water supplies are not depleted. It allows us to come up with all those things before an application can be filed. If there isn't a moratorium, then if an application comes in, then the city has to accept it and treat it like any other application. And as you can probably tell from the presentation, it's a use we haven't really dealt with. So it would be difficult to figure out exactly the fairest way to handle such a thing. So a moratorium definitely helps us get situated and be better positioned for any potential applications. Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think those are my main two questions. I certainly have a lot of thoughts, but if other council members have questions they would like to ask, I'm happy to talk later.
We can do that. Go around. Do other people have questions? Okay, John, go ahead.
So I just have, I think, two I really want to ask. So my first question is, I've thought these out already. So of all the things that we've been talking about and concerns being raised, like electricity demand, water use, noise, generators, emissions, stormwater, CAOs, shoreline impacts, which of those are already addressed through existing city regulations and processes, and where does staff see actual regulatory gaps, if any?
I can start with that, and Ben, you might be able to add something. It's without having a definition of the use, it's really hard to say what is and isn't addressed in the code. So some of those things, of course, have we have regulations for certain uses, but that would be, from my perspective, exactly the kind of thing that we would figure out during a moratorium period, is to come back to you and say, okay, if we define it, if this is how we define this category of use, then here are the gaps or the kinds of issues that remain that we need to deal with. In some cases, there may be gaps. In some cases, there might be revisions or fine tuning that has to happen. Ben, is there something you'd add to that?
No, I would agree with that. Yeah, the definition is really important, defining the issues. We do have, environmental controls like SEPA review, but that's not always going to be something that's available. Like a building that's larger than 4,000 square feet gross floor area would go under SEPA review, but not all conditional use permits require SEPA.
And my second question has to do with what does staff envision would be the things we'd ask if we wanted to send these questions to Planning Commission in the UAC? Like, what would be the benefits of having them go through this before we brought it back to council? What benefits would staff get from those conversations that would help them to kind of create frameworks and definitions that are important to this conversation?
From my perspective, I think that would allow us to have a better sense of where the real issues are. So for example, on electricity use, we have a certain amount of use, BPA tier 1 power that we can have. So maybe if we have a conversation at UAC, we can say, okay, it makes sense to restrict any applications to be for facilities under this many megawatts, right? Because otherwise it might trip up the community into tier 2 power. So I think there are a lot of those fine-tuned details that really the expertise that's represented at those communities would help us narrow down so that you can be really precise about avoiding the impacts you want to avoid and not having unintended consequences, right? So you're not going to have a outright ban for a use for a number of legal reasons. What you're going to have is a set of controls that apply evenly to everybody. So if you say you don't want a facility that's more than whatever the definition is, you want to make sure you have not put in there accidentally things that prevent other things that you do want for the community. So it's just a pretty precise, systematic view. And I think those interactions with the community, with the boards and commissions can help define how to frame those things up better.
Council, if I can just add to that, I think it's important that the Planning Commission would have the purview to focus on the land use regulations and controls that could be put in place long-term, whereas the Utility Advisory Committee could look at those controls relative to our various utilities.
So those are the questions I have. I obviously have more thoughts later, but I will give other council members opportunity to ask questions. Thank you.
Other questions? Go ahead, Drew, and then Mark.
My first question that I know has been asked by council, public, and everyone else, but just one more time in a nice, handy, open meeting. Do we have anyone currently submitting paperwork in an attempt to build a data center in Port Angeles?
No, we do not.
No, we do not. Okay, thank you.
Right?
Right. Okay, yes. So our planning department is shaking their head in agreement with the city attorney. So yes, that is correct. Thank you. My next question is related to moratoriums in general. RCW says max of 6 months with the potential of being able to extend. Do we actually have to have it last the entire 6 months? If the city does its due diligence, can we cut that short if we're good to go?
You can, yes, you can have it be as short as we need to get the work done.
Okay.
And then open it up again.
Okay.
So that's just the maximum.
Okay. And then procedurally, I guess I'm asking for staff's opinion. It seems like it would make the most sense because I'm not in a position to define data center tonight for a whole bunch of reasons. And I don't want to see servers and other small units being wrapped up in that. I mean, Eric's probably going to shake his head no wherever he's at. But yeah. But you can argue the hospital has a data center based on server usage. No. But I could see that inadvertently happening. Would it make the most sense to be vague and broad for the moratorium, and then the entire purpose of the moratorium is for that specificity?
Council, I would say the value of the moratorium is to gain all the answers relative to the long-term best practices that you can put in place. And the moratorium is really a foolproof way to ensure that you don't see any applications that either meet definitions or don't meet definitions come in during an interim period while you're working on those regulations. So I think the moratorium timeframe itself is where you would work on build actual definitions, do the research, do the homework, determine what might be defined as a data center, what might be defined as a server room for one of our local businesses or government operations.
Thank you. Like everyone else, I'll have statements as well, but that's it for questions.
Mark, go ahead.
Question for our city attorney. Can a city outright ban data centers?
That's an interesting question. So the city council has police powers to take actions for health and welfare and safety of the community. There has to be a really strong nexus between those factors and a thing that is banned outright. So there have been cities that have attempted to do it. There have been lawsuits. It's a possibility if you can make a really strong connection between the police powers goals and the banning. But the best practice really is to come up with the criteria and the development standards that are applied uniformly across all businesses that apply for those permits.
Thank you.
Patricia, do you have any questions?
No, I think all of the questions have been really good questions. I guess more statements.
Let me ask my questions real quick and then we'll go around for statements because I think we all have thoughts we want to share, but wanted to get our questions answered first. So I just want to restate what I think I have heard tonight. For the purpose of a moratorium, we would want some definition of what it is that we are putting a pause on. And you gave us two options just as a starting point for consideration. But if going forward, we could potentially restrict more broadly beyond a definition to just uses that are informing how I think about this. Can we, rather than saying we're banning data centers, that we are restricting land use and other things by things like how many megahertz of sound, how much heat, how much power, how much light, then we don't worry about the things that we're not trying to catch. We're really capturing those critical things. And just a clarification for anyone who's listening, I'm thinking back to a previous moratorium we did, is that a moratorium doesn't impact anything that is currently existing. It is only about stopping applications during the time of the moratorium. So, okay.
Mayor, would it help if I have some language that other cities have used in the declaration of the moratorium? Would that be helpful for council if I read an example?
Sure.
Because I think that was, one of the questions is how do we frame the broadness when we are declaring the moratorium? Right. So one city's example is a 6-month pause on acceptance, processing, and approval of land use and permit applications for facilities whose principal use is digital data processing, storage, management, or transmission. Incidental server equipment supporting another principal use is not covered in here. So they carve out the kinds of things that one would be worried about accidentally catching. But the process that you propose would also work if we say something greater than X number square feet that uses this much power. So it can be done however you want.
And then we can go back to code amendments based on, we could, if we chose to, go back and do code amendments based on potentially limits on the things that we want to be sure we're protecting.
Exactly.
Thank you. All right. Should we just go back in the same order? Navarra, do you want to start?
I would love to start. First, I wanted to sort of address Drew's comment, which was that in advance of this meeting, I have read a number of different cities' various moratoria, and thought through really some of those things that Attorney Sahandi just read, and thinking through what is the difference between a server room that many businesses use and a data center, right? One of the other questions I have that I think a moratorium would be helpful with is that we have other businesses in the city who I imagine use substantial amounts of electricity and power and water. And frankly, I have no idea what that kind of power usage looks like. And I think that as a member of UAC and as a council member, being able to hone in on what those data usages are, I'm thinking particularly at the port as one of our biggest sort of infrastructure development places and the Marine Trade Center, thinking through what are those, what is the biggest megawatt usage in the city currently, and think about that as we move forward and think about how we restrict power usage in the future. If it's not clear, I fully support both the moratorium and eventually a permanent ban on data centers. I think, as many other people mentioned during public comment, there's substantial data that the cons greatly outweigh the pros, particularly through the water usage, the power usage, the light pollution, the impact on our environment. The list goes on and on. And I think also the sort of just general health concerns from that amount of pollution in our community. And I think that's really important to think about as we are protecting our community and our residents, and that's something that we as council members are tasked with. I think also it's worth noting that a lot of people do move here and come to visit Port Angeles, not for big business. They come here for the recreation opportunities, for our environment, for really what this community has to offer, which is the nexus between the mountains and the sea. And that having data centers really of any size in our community, I think diminishes that value. Additionally, I think it's worth talking about some of the other communities that are facing immense power shortages right now because their city councils have essentially neglected the health and welfare of their residents, such as Gary, Indiana, who has been impacted both by a combination of storms that took out part of the grid, and then that power grid has been unable to come back essentially because of the data centers that are there. This has been reported on in a number of national news outlets, including, I believe it's USA Today. And thinking through issues like that. Additionally, in Virginia, there were so many power data centers that all went offline at the same time, which also deeply impacted the power grid and sort of, I think, flooded it essentially and left those residents without power as well because there was no ability for governments to have those regulations on, when you can and can't just suddenly turn off your power, turn it on in a way that impacted the community. I think these are really deep issues. I'm really grateful that we're talking about them. And I think that, we're not the first, as we saw, we are not the first community, not just in Washington, but nationwide, that is saying no thank you to data centers and looking out for their residents. And so I also, to Drew's point, hope that we can come up with a solution, certainly sooner than 6 months. But I think that having that maximum amount for the moratorium gives us plenty of time because we all know that things come up and some things take a long time and we want to get it right. Additionally, I think that, again, to sort of Attorney Sahandy's point, that we in a moratorium can prohibit new or expanded data center development, which also sort of gets to that issue around the server rooms or, not having a definition now. What is that? Also, the Pierce County moratorium talks a little bit about what megawattage of data centers there are. So does the proposal out of Nashville, Tennessee. And so I think that there's also potential to talk about the smaller data centers, the kind of medium size and the large sizes. So anyhow, where I'm going with this is that I think there's a lot of different opportunities that we have as a city to really be able to work with the community that we have, knowing the power usage that we have at our different facilities, and be able to, I think, as I said, protect the health, safety, and welfare of our community through ensuring that we have continued water and power usage. Additionally, I'm sure other council members are going to talk about this as well, but just to say it all, we're in a drought. We consistently have advocated to Clallam County over the last, 5, 6 years, 4 years, 4 years, to make sure that they protect our sole water source. We just talked last week about our critical areas ordinance and working on making sure that we have alternative water sources when we can. And I think that thinking through strategically any kind of new business that is going to put an immense strain on our water supply is contrary to everything we just talked about last week. And so I think as we move forward and as we're looking at this, It's important to me that we are really aligning all of our goals with our climate mitigation plan, with our shoreline plan, with our comprehensive plan, with our critical areas ordinance, that this is all part of the same process, that we're all working towards in the same direction and aligning our priorities to really to have a cohesive vision for our community. And I think that this is a huge part of that.
Thank you, Navarro. John.
Thank you for those comments. So I've spent last couple of weeks just kind of learning as much as I can about this. First, I want to just be on the record saying I am fundamentally against any sort of business operation that increases rates to our ratepayers, whether it's electricity or sewer or wastewater or water in general. I'm against that. So that's something I will not consider in a project if that has the potential to do that. I also share Councilmember Schwab's concerns about other entities that are already operating in our city being wrapped up in this based on the definition, the hospital, the school district, others that have substantial network capabilities and servers that they need to have their employees have email. I mean, where does email stored? On a server in someone's room, right? We use and depend on some of these technologies already, our cell phone, our text messages, things we use every day. So I really believe the definition, as City Attorney said, is really important moving forward. I believe a moratorium gives us time to make those decisions correctly. As we learned in our Science of Hope presentation, urgency can lead us to make rash decisions, and I want to make sure this is well thought out, developed, plenty of community input, businesses, whatnot. So I think a moratorium would be positive in the short term to vet out these issues that we are coming up against and that our community has serious concerns around. I also want to make sure that whatever decisions we make impact the city as a whole, no matter where a business is put in, not just particular places. I feel like no matter where something is put in will have an impact on our city. And I feel like any code updates, restrictions, enforcement should be general. As you should think about all zones and places that have these impacts, not just particular zones. I think that that's prudent and equitable. I also think this is a conversation that we need to have a joint meeting with other entities, the PUD, Collin County, the port. I mean, it's a problem we all need to confront. I don't mind being a leader on an issue, but I really feel like we need to have all those players at the table too, in some cases. I don't not disagree with looking at it on a broader countywide scale, but I feel like we need to be at the table with them. And I feel like some of them have concerns and want to be at the table with us. So I would like to see that. Lastly, I believe anything we do, and I've said this before, considerably in this case needs to go through Planning Commission, UAC. It needs to go through those commissions that we have set up to look and talk about these issues before it comes back here. So I hope part of this process, if council decides to enact a moratorium, to go back to those places and have these conversations, invite the public in those smaller spaces, get those expertise and viewpoints from those community members who serve on there that, quite frankly, might have more insights into this than I do, and I want to hear from them. So, I'm in favor of a moratorium at this point, so that we can vet these issues and make sure we're making a decision that's correct. Long-term decision, not just one that's short-term that will have impacts for years to come, right? Beyond when any of us are on this council. So I think that's really important to grapple with and make sure we do it right the first time. and vet all the issues and viewpoints. So that's all I have to say, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, John. Drew.
Yeah, so I actually had several pages of notes after months of talking to the public, staff. I prefer brevity, so I'm just going to go ahead and skip down to my motion, which basically summarizes everything we've been hearing. And it sounds like is council's opinion also. I move to direct staff to return to the October 6th City Council meeting language establishing a 6-month moratorium on new applications for development where a data center would be the principal use. The moratorium should exclude ordinary server and computing equipment accessory to another principal use. It should include a work plan providing for public participation, analysis of utility and industrial land impacts, appropriate planning commission, UAC, and legal review, and return the permanent options no later than 60 days before the moratorium expires. The moratorium should end early if permanent regulations take effect before the expiration date.
Second.
And I can email that to
Thank
the
you.
mayor. Yeah, I knew that was going to be the very next thing.
Thank you.
Like I said, I had a whole bunch written to speak to this, but I think that motion encapsulates, it's been a very long day for me, all my opinions and points of views for it. And I don't think I have anything to add to it right this second.
All right, Mark.
Well, I support a moratorium. Technology often outpaces its effects on communities and their ability to regulate unintended consequences. While some cities have financially benefited from data center development, others have been left with various forms of pollution, increased utility rates, and very few new jobs for community members. Data centers impact a complex combination of issues that communities are just beginning to understand, from water stewardship to environmental impacts, land use, and energy cost and consumption. The effects should be well understood before the permitting process begins. It's for those reasons that I support a 6-month moratorium that allows council and staff to gather more information, seek public input, and receive feedback from our advisory boards on the impacts of data centers in our community.
Latricia.
Thank you for staff for actually putting this on the next agenda. That was quick. I really appreciate that. Everybody's already said everything I would say. Thanks, Mark, for bringing up and highlighting jobs. I think when we want to support economic drivers in our community, we want to make sure that those drivers are going to bring more than just like less than a dozen jobs. Like 5. I can't imagine a data center is going to bring more than 5 or 6 people to our community and the workforce, where we really want to support and have those economic drivers that are, like Westport or some of those other entities in our community, healthcare that brings lots of jobs into our community. Our school districts bring a lot of jobs in our community. So we want to be able to provide or support those economic drivers that do that. And I also want to thank our citizens for emailing City Council, for continuing to bring this up and reminding us that this is an issue that is of concern. Also, again, our co-counselors, thank you for also making sure that we include planning and UAC as part of this process. I remember when we did short-term rentals, we got some feedback on that part of it, not having them as inclusive in the process. So I really appreciate that. And I think that those will be opportunities, again, for our citizens in the community to provide feedback at more meetings instead of just City Council. So thank you, everybody, for taking time to have this discussion. And actually for being here. I appreciate that. It's a lot taking out of your time to come to a city council meeting to let us know what's important for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Latricia. I certainly support a moratorium. I appreciate the suggestion of having Planning Commission and UAC look at being very specific about, I mean, I think my previous questions probably make that clear, that very clear definitions, to me, building around limits to things that we have limited resources for, and or the opposite of that, which is how about not so much light and, you know, we don't need something glowing in the middle of town. I have a question, and that is based on, I mean, the motion has a second, but just thinking about our current process, could we find ourselves in a bind if we don't have a public hearing for a moratorium until the 6th of October? Like, does our process work fast enough that someone could sneak something in knowing that we're talking about this? And maybe that can't be answered, but I'm just considering whether or not we want to flip it a little bit, because you did suggest we could pass something tonight and then within 60 days have a public hearing. And I might not have a majority of council that thinks that that's okay, but is the 6th opening us up for potential, you know what I'm asking? Like, does that make sense? I mean, we passed laws about how fast things have to be turned around, right? So I just want to make sure we're not opening ourselves up.
So council, it is true that if someone were to quickly put together an application between now and October 6th, we would not yet have a moratorium in place and they could turn in that application. So if council chose to, we could make it happen tonight, but we'd probably need a break to draft a resolution for you to pass.
Right. That's true. Okay. Drew?
If I may comment, I would be hesitant to support something that's tonight, regardless of what it is, because that's really fast to put something together that we want to make sure we don't mess up. I'm okay amending it or having someone else amend it to read the next council meeting if we want to. But I have concerns of what will happen if we force staff to try to make a resolution for us in like a 10-minute period.
Fair enough. So I'll just, yes, please do.
For staff, is there a potential resolution already drafted or most of the way draft? I'm asking like to address Drew's concerns. I know sometimes things are prepared in advance that could come to council.
We don't have one pre-drafted, but the language that I read earlier, I think works for what I've heard from everybody. So we could either use that or kind of combine it with what was alternatively suggested. So we could take a shot at it, but we do not have one pre-drafted.
Thank you. My thought is that I think to Drew's motion, I think what is, and without having it in front of me, what I thought was nice about it is that it addressed some of the concerns about making sure that we have some kind of process in place. I think probably, without speaking for Drew, the intention is to provide staff enough time to, you know, have that kind of plan to us. And so I think that there's likely a creative way to be able to pass a moratorium tonight and also come back in next week or in a couple of weeks saying we would like to see what the plan is around what public outreach is going to look like. And I think there's a way to do both of those things that aren't on the same day. If that makes sense to council.
I think so. Well, it makes sense to me, I guess. So does anyone want to move to amend the main motion to?
Can you read it or send it
yes, I can,
to us?
I can read it again.
Because it's a long motion.
Yes. So the motion is as currently proposed. I move to direct staff to return on the October 6th City Council meeting language establishing a 6-month moratorium on new applications for development where a data center would be the principal use. The moratorium should exclude ordinary server and computing equipment accessory to other principal use. It should include a work plan providing for public participation, analysis of utility and industrial land impacts, appropriate planning commission, UAC, and legal review, and return of the permanent options no later than 60 days before the moratorium expires. The moratorium should end early if permanent regulations take effect before the expiration date. So I could just make the motion, but I don't usually do that, is just to make that motion to amend the main motion. I'm just going to do that. I move to amend the main motion to permanent options no later. No, sorry, that's wrong. I direct staff. I move to amend the main motion to say return to the September 15th. Thank you. September 15th City Council meeting, language establishing a 6-month moratorium.
Second.
Okay. And then I think I don't need to say anything more. I think
Can
yes.
For me, that doesn't call for a moratorium starting tonight.
Correct. That would be that we allow staff to draft a resolution declaring a moratorium that we would have on our agenda for consideration on the 15th. So 2 weeks instead of tonight. I'm going to go to Mark because he had his hand up for a little bit, and then I'll go back to Navarro. Go ahead.
With that amended motion, questions for staff. How comfortable are you with that versus crafting language this evening? Okay, I think the smile tells me, but I'm going to go ahead and let you answer.
We can do either one. Obviously, if we have a little more time, we can be a little more comfortable with the process. But also, there's no guarantee that an application won't come in the interim. So it's really kind of hard to.
I know that when I write reports and I have 15 minutes, it's, not as good as when I can actually sit down and put some thought into it.
Navarro?
I think I certainly understand. I mean, I seconded the motion, Drew's motion. So, but I think it's very nice to hear that staff feel like they could draft something that would benefit our community and be in front of council that we could support tonight. And I think it's valuable to hear that because to me that says is that, I trust our staff that when they tell us they can get something to us tonight, they can get something to us tonight. And I think based on what I've heard the concerns are, I mean, anybody who listened to that county meeting that was referenced by some of the public commenters knows that what people applied for who are, buying the McKinley Mill or leasing it, they've applied for grants that include data centers. So whether or not they've submitted an application or whether or not that's actually what they're going to apply their specific grant to, the funder funds data centers among other things. And so I'm deeply concerned about that. And I think that if somebody is preparing a grant application that talks about that, it's likely that they're looking for that they're preparing their other documents as well. Maybe that's alarmist, but that's what my concern is. And so I'm more inclined to support a moratorium that goes into effect tonight.
All right. So we've complicated things by having an amendment to the main motion, but now it sounds like there may be a majority too. So let's vote on the proposed amendment. And then we can consider, that's easier than an amendment to an amendment. So, so we have a proposed amendment to the main motion to direct staff to return on September 15th to the September 15th City Council meeting. All those in favor of that motion, please say aye.
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 Okay, that motion passes. So now we have an amended main motion. Oh, sorry, anyone opposed? And I didn't have us raise our hands. My apologies to people online. That was a unanimous. So now we have an amended main motion. Move to direct staff to return on the September 15th council meeting language. Drew?
If you could give me 30 seconds, I think I can edit this to make it so half of it happens right now and half of it happens later. But you need to give me like 30 seconds to work on my motion, then I can amend it.
I don't know that we need to amend it that way.
If no one thinks we need to amend it that way, that's fine too.
I should look at staff.
I mean, technically, it says by, well, actually says return on, so I can edit that to say by, and then they can do it later tonight.
So it sounds like we have, yeah, John, go ahead.
So my only problem with the suggestion is that I want our community to be able to read the resolution and be informed before we vote on it. And I'm not in favor of something tonight that our community members haven't seen and read for themselves before we vote on something. I believe that is not transparent, and I would not support that. I would support the motion the way it is right now, but I'm just going to say I will not support a motion that goes in effect tonight without community being able to read what it says and give feedback and public comment on it before we vote on it. I think it's just too important to do that. That's my opinion and my point of view.
All right, which is part of the reason why they require a public hearing. All right, is there any, I mean, I think I don't need to respond to that necessarily, but Drew, go ahead.
I amend the main motion to say I move direct staff to return by September 15th, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That one word literally changes it. So if it gets done tonight and we decide to vote on it, yes or no, we could. If it gets done for a special meeting and we decide to vote on it, we could. The current motion specifically makes it so it has to be September 15th.
Second that. Okay. So,
and my apologies, I spoke to the motion while making the motion, which is not correct.
That's all right. I'm feeling like we've been talking about it for a while, so I'm okay to be efficient because we haven't been very efficient at this point. But I think it is important. It speaks to how important we are taking this if we want to get it as right as we can. Mark, go ahead.
So time is still needed to draft the language. I'm curious what the logistics of that are. If there is even a possibility we have given no direction to go ahead and begin doing this, so how would that process begin now that we might be able to leave with a moratorium?
So staff can correct me if I'm wrong, but we would pass the motion. If we pass the amendment to the main motion and change the word by, it gives then we could take a 10-minute break, 15-minute break, and allow staff time to draft something that we could then review before we move on to the next agenda item.
I'd support that.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion to direct staff to return by September 15th, by the September 15th City Council meeting, language establishing a 6-month moratorium on new applications for development where a data center would be the principal use. The moratorium should include ordinary server and computing equipment accessory to other, actually, sorry, I'm going to pause. I want to say one thing. For my thoughts on the language that is drafting, I want to be mindful that we might have a development where it is not the principal use, but it is also not accessory to other principal use. So that it isn't a part, right? I think that's, sorry, I'm continuing on in the weeds. I just want to say that before we vote. I move to direct staff to return by September 5th, by the September 15th City Council meeting, language establishing a 6-month moratorium on new applications for development where a data center would be the principal use. The moratorium should exclude ordinary server and computing equipment accessory to another principal use. It should include a work plan providing for public participation, analysis of utility and industrial land impacts, appropriate planning commission UAC and legal review, and return of the permanent options no later than 60 days before the moratorium expires. The moratorium should end early if permanent regulations take effect before the expiration date. Let's do all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
All right, the motion passes 6-1. Thank you. And so we will take a 15-minute break. Sorry, yes? 5-1. Sorry, thank you. We are missing someone. Yes, I caught by the math teacher for not being so good at my arithmetic tonight. Thank you. He's back in school mode. All right, thank you. So thank you for your patience while we give staff some time to bring back something for our consideration this evening. And we will take a 15-minute break. Thank you. I don't know. They are. Just a note for anyone joining us virtually who can't see council chambers, we are still waiting on staff to return. So we will pick up again shortly. I recognize that we are over our 15-minute break. So thank you for your patience. Okay, we are going to need to add another 10 minutes to our break. Okay, thank you all for your patience. We have one step that I cannot confirm nor deny, can neither confirm nor deny whether or not we actually passed the main motion. So my sincere apologies. I'm going to read the amended main motion and call for a vote because I think we may have missed that step. Apologies, it gets a little sometimes I have a little hard time tracking, so apologies for that. So we have an amended main motion to direct staff to return by September 15th, by the September 15th City Council meeting, language establishing a 6-month moratorium on new applications for development where a data center would be the principal use. The moratorium should exclude ordinary server and computing equipment accessory to another principal use. It should include a work plan providing for public participation, analysis of utility and industrial land impacts, appropriate planning commission, UAC and legal review, and return of the permanent options no later than 60 days before the moratorium expires. The moratorium should end early if permanent regulations take effect before the expiration date. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay. Thank you. The motion passes. And now we have, I'm going to take 2 seconds to read this. Thank you. So for anyone who,
It might be helpful to just read it out loud into the record.
Sure.
Okay.
I'll just read it. I'll read the whole thing rather than just the part that I usually do. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Port Angeles, Washington, declaring a moratorium on the acceptance, processing, and approval of facilities whose principal use is digital data processing, storage, management, or transmission. Incidental server equipment supporting another principal use is excluded, and directing a review process. Whereas City Council has identified numerous potential community impacts from the establishment of data centers within the boundaries of the City of Port Angeles, and whereas the Port Angeles Municipal Code has not yet defined data centers nor established formal regulations for data center application reviews, and whereas a moratorium will best provide the opportunity to adequately define, regulate, and identify impacts to the environment, local utilities, and surrounding land uses, and whereas City Council desires immediate effectiveness of this action and will schedule a public hearing on the same within 60 days of the date hereof. And whereas City Council desires a robust public review process, including through Utility Advisory Committee and Planning Commission. Now, therefore, the City Council of the City of Port Angeles do hereby resolve as follows. Section 1, moratorium. A moratorium is hereby declared for a period of 6 months on the acceptance, processing, and approval of facilities whose principal use is digital data processing, storage, management, or transmission. Incidental server equipment supporting another principal use is excluded. The moratorium may be extended as permitted by law and will end upon the permanent adoption of regulations. Section 2, review process. Staff is directed to create a work plan providing for public participation, analysis of utility and industrial land impacts, appropriate planning commission, UAC and legal review, and return of the permanent options no later than 60 days before the moratorium expires. Section 3, corrections. The city clerk and the codifiers of this resolution are authorized to make necessary corrections to this resolution, including but not limited to the correction of the scrivener's clerical errors, references to other local, state, or federal laws, codes or regulations, rules or regulations, or numbering, section, subsection numbers, and any references thereto. Section 4, effective date. This resolution, being an exercise of power specifically designated to the city legislative body, is not subject to the referendum. To referendum. This resolution shall take effect immediately and then passed by the City Council of the City of Port Angeles at a regular meeting of said council, currently states held on the first day of September 2026. So,
Mayor, if I could.
Yes, please do.
Share some important information. So one, really grateful to the drafting team of Attorney Sahandi as well as Deputy City Manager Goings. They did an outstanding job getting things drafted quickly. Part of that was also legal research relative to recognizing we are drafting this resolution same night. And with that in mind, council rules of procedure does require 3/4 of the 7-member body to vote affirmative in order for a motion to pass on this item. And just want to share that as that would be all 6 of you.
Thank you. So just a point of clarification back is if it doesn't pass tonight, we can put it on the agenda for the 15th. and still meet the language of the motion.
Correct.
So, great. All right. Are there comments or questions? John, go ahead.
Okay. So I just want to restate, I'm not opposed to the moratorium. I just was opposed to it happening very quickly, but reading this, especially the part where there'll be a public hearing within 60 days, I'm supportive of that. I just want there to be an opportunity for the public to have a say in this. So this written as it is, I support the moratorium as written. I just didn't support the language of the motion, but I will support this as written, as it provides the public enough time to digest, read, and provide comment on it. Hopefully sooner rather than later. But just want to be very clear about that.
Thank you, John. Any other comments or questions? All right. So I do need a motion to adopt the resolution if someone would like to make one.
I move that we adopt the resolution.
I'll second
All right.
the motion.
Any last comments or questions? Okay, thank you. I think we all got all of our comments and questions out before this. Okay, so we have before us a motion to pass the resolution that I have just read. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye and raise your hand. Aye. Opposed? None. So the motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, drafting team, for coming up with this. And we will look forward to a public hearing within the next 60 days and know that we have added to the workload for staff to get this process rolling, but look forward to hearing particularly from Planning Commission and UAC. Okay, that concludes item I1. I just wanted to throw out there, the deadline for the National Forest Roadless Rule is not till the 18th, which is after our next meeting. And I wonder how you all would feel about us just moving that to, I mean, it's only 8:20, but we spent a lot of time on I1, and I wonder if there's any concern with.
I move to table I2 until the next city council meeting.
Second.
Right, hold on, I gotta look and see what I moved.
But there wasn't a date on that, was there?
September 18th.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Can I ask a point of clarification?
Yes.
Is there any opposition from staff on that movement? Like, or the movement for item I2?
Council, no concerns, holding off until next meeting.
Okay, not debatable, not amendable. Interesting. You sort of combined two things. I'm just going to throw this out there. Postpone to a certain time, which is what you did do technically, but you used the term table. I'm going to go with postpone to a certain time.
Do you want me to amend it to actually say postpone? Okay.
I don't think we need to do that, but
Clerk,
I think
I actually said postponed.
okay. So it is debatable. If anyone has anything they want to say about that. Okay. Okay, so we have a motion to postpone item I2. That's the letter opposing the proposed repeal of the National Forest Roadless Rule to the September 15th meeting. Anyone opposed to the motion, please state your opposition. All right, hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. And it's not my goal to get out early, but I feel like we spent a lot of time on that item. Although we just had a long break, so we're definitely not taking one now. Okay. So item I2 has been moved to 9:15. That is the date, September 15th, not the time. And so let's do council reports, and we'll start with Latricia this time.
I attended the joint PUD meeting. I also that was a great meeting. We learned about smart meters, and that was a really good, productive meeting. Also participated in, I think I made it MRC. I think I stated that at the last meeting, but we're going to have another MRC, a small subcommittee meeting coming up here in a couple of days, this Friday. Also went down and participated in Jamming in the Park. It was great to see folks down there, and great performers, and it didn't rain on us. It got a little windy, but it was fun. So that's the end of my report for tonight. Thank you. Oh, I did also sit in, sorry, on the Calm Transit meeting for Amy, as she wasn't able to participate, and we did pass the Calm Transportation plan and approve the there were some other things that were done. I'll let Navarra talk about that since she's the permanent member on that.
Thank you, Latricia. Drew.
Yeah, thank you for everyone for putting up with me tonight. I've been up since about 3:30 this morning. So since the last council meeting that I've not been able to attend, I did actually still do some city council related stuff. Of course, we had our work session on the 25th. I did have an NODC meeting last Thursday that I was able to attend to. This upcoming week, Olympic Peninsula Tourism Commission, we have a meeting on Thursday that's actually going to be out at, I believe, 7 Cedars, if I remember correctly. And then next Wednesday is the next Port Angeles Chamber of Commerce luncheon. I do attend that in my private capacity as a store owner, but I do also like to make sure that council is aware that I'd like to attend those. And that is all I have for you tonight.
Thank you. Mark, go ahead.
I am in between council assignments, but I would like to flag that I would like to see, as part of the process, a joint work session with city, county, PUD, and other relevant entities.
Thank you, Mark. Navarra.
As Latricia mentioned, I did attend Clown Transit. We did a lot of things. One of them was an employment agreement with our general manager. And I think it's worth just talking about that. You know, I think Clown Transit's in a really steady place right now. And that our manager is doing a really wonderful job. And I think deserves that public recognition of really moving forward the transit needs of our community, particularly through the new route rollout, and thinking strategically about how we build more connectivity between us and other communities, us meaning Clallam County. But I think that is really evidenced through the work being done out in the Forks area and getting public buses out there and the microtransit. Additionally, I wanted to mention that the Clallam Transit has a community advisory board that is currently accepting applications. And so if folks are interested in applying and want to give input on the bus system, we would love to have your applications. They open today and they close on September 30th. Also, sometimes people get trespassed from the bus for hopefully short periods of time. It's sometimes longer. And folks who were trespassed also have the opportunity to apply to be on that board, because a lot of times those trespass notices are for such short amount of time, and they continue to ride the bus with no problem. So I really appreciate Clallam County's long-term goals towards making sure that the bus system is equitable for everybody. I also just wanted to say a huge thank you to staff for the lift tonight, and for the presentation. You know, with that quick turnaround, I think it is really important, and I'm just really grateful that we were all able to come together and I think have a really good path forward. So thank you.
Can I just add, don't forget about the youth rep on the Clallam Transit.
And there's a youth rep. So if there's any youth watching, 16 and over, people should apply.
Excellent. Thank you. John, go ahead.
Okay, so since the last council meeting, I attended the PUD subcommittee meeting. I thought was really great. There's a presentation on AMIs. I thought it was great to see what the county's doing with that, and there's lots of interest in that. So I really appreciated the opportunity to meet with them and talk about utility related issues and ways we can partner better. That was great. It was really early in the morning though, so it was my prep for school meeting. On Friday, the 21st, I met with Colleen Macular at the EDC just to kind of hear what they've been doing. It's informative to hear their plans, how they're helping the city. I found it enjoyable. I mean, I learned a lot, and I appreciate her taking the time to meet with me. I just went back to work on Thursday. Yay me. Yesterday, I actually went to the pier and I attended the International Overdose Awareness celebration there. It was, knowing that a lot of our members of our community have had the unfortunate circumstances of experiencing addiction, whether it's them or someone they've known or loved that has passed away, or just other kinds of trauma. I think it's important to hear those stories and just really understand that, no one looks for that. And I found the bravery of those people coming with the microphone to speak their truth and share their story inspiring. So I'm glad that our city allows those kinds of events to really let people be involved in here and really experience what other people have gone through. I found it really heartwarming and sad, and a lot of courage in those people. So whoever, I don't know who put that on, but thank you for doing that. Got to dance a little bit too and shake my body out. So my kids would have been embarrassed. And then on the 24th, I did a ride along with Deputy Chief Vieta. The professionalism of our police department when they encounter different situations is admirable. I appreciate getting a sense of what they're doing every day. And I know our first responders, police, fire, paramedics, do a lot of stuff behind the scenes that don't go noticed or talked about enough. So I really want to shower appreciation towards them, because it's a tough job, right? Thankless, but I really, from what I've seen, our police department works with utmost dignity and respect and professionalism. And so I appreciate Chief Smith, your department. And then I guess one other point I just wanted to say is tomorrow is like an anniversary date for me. It'll be a year since I was appointed to this position. So I can't believe it's already been a year, but I just wanted to thank staff for their professionalism and the way they conduct themselves. My fellow council members, it's been nice to work with, learn, grow with you. The positive interaction I've had with constituents and people in our community, I've enjoyed those. I've learned a lot about it, and I hope to continue to grow me and hopefully advocate in the best interest of our community next year. So with that will be my comments for the evening. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I have attended the overdose awareness event many years in a row, and this year I was not able to attend. I was heading back from dropping my son off in college. Nothing makes you feel old like, wait, how'd that happen? But here we are. So I guess the only thing that is worth reporting is the Lauridsen Trust, which is a nonprofit trust that I am appointed to as the mayor, because the trust says the mayor of the city of Port Angeles is a trustee. We had a longtime member who was a banker, also required by the trust, who has retired. And so we're looking to fill that position. If you happen to know any bankers who might be interested in joining a nonprofit board, the purpose of the board is to support widows in Clallam County in need. And then we also give money for dental work and support OPCC's dental program with a regular donation. And one is the trust and one's the foundation, and we combine them, and I can't remember which does which. So don't quote me on any of that tonight, but also if you know widows who are in need of support. We do things like sort of emergency bridge funds. So buy a hot water heater, or need dental work, or need car repair to keep their vehicle working so they can get to work, that sort of thing. We have an application, and you can find us in the senior list. And then, I'm not positive we have a website. I don't remember it right now. So super helpful report. But anyway, just don't talk about the Luritz Trust much, and figured now's a good time to mention it. So with that, I will go to the city manager.
Mayor and Council, I just have one item for you this evening, and that is to let you know that due to the work of Director Curtin and Todd Milkey over at the county, we do finally have a groundbreaking ceremony set for the Joint Public Safety Facility. And that is scheduled for a somewhat difficult time for all of us, being that we're trying to fit it in between both a county meeting and a city meeting. So right now that is scheduled, and I don't anticipate it will change, but September 15th at 4:15 p.m. And we need to depart there no later than 4:45 p.m. to get back here for our 5 p.m. work session on September 15th.
Well, at least we're being efficient.
Council, that's all I have for you this evening.
You're going to email that all to us, right?
Happy to do so.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I forgot a real quick one that the way everyone was invited, I sent something to Carrie, but I don't think it was in the way a lot of our invites come, where it triggers her to know that we were all invited. So if anyone else I have the easiest attendance, I recognize, is planning on attending the ribbon cutting for the dental hygiene program at the college, if you could, that's on Thursday at 3:30. If you can let Carrie know, we were all invited, but just want to make sure we know if we need to notice it or not. But I'm going to walk down the stairs for the ribbon cutting event. It's a long trip. And that is this Thursday. So also the first day of school. So remember, school zones are back in effect starting Thursday, and please definitely slow down, because people get lax over the summer when those lights aren't flashing. So I mostly drive by Franklin. So also please do that. Sorry, I guess I wasn't done. All right, second public comment period. If you are joining us virtually, please raise your virtual hand. If you are in council chambers, you can just come down to the microphone in a semblance of order. Don't need to raise your hand, but we'll start with Nemo, who is up, and work our way through other folks who wish to speak. Same rules apply, name whether or not you're a resident, and 3 minutes. Go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you. Nemo Callaway, city resident. I had one thing to talk about. Now I have 3. It's crazy how this happens. If you like the Overdose Awareness Day, I would like to point out that the Recovery Resources Bash is on September 25th at Fern Burton, which is for keeping people from becoming a memory at the Overdose Awareness Day. We appreciate that around here. I will point out one thing that I noticed about this resolution, which is that it doesn't say anything about secondary usages for data centers. Amazon is pretty aggressive with putting data centers in the back of their warehouses. This is something they've done in a few places, notably North Seattle. This moratorium doesn't stop that particular activity. So if Amazon puts in a warehouse and then decides to put a server farm in the back of their warehouse, that would be a secondary use, and it is not incidental to their primary use, and it is not a primary use. So it would not be blocked by this particular moratorium. So that's something to keep in mind as you look at maybe fixing it in a couple weeks. The third thing, which is what I actually wanted to bring up, is just because I can't get to the transit boards because they're at a bad time for me. When you go to a bus stop, you are faced with a QR code instead of a schedule, and QR codes are not schedules. And if your phone is dead and you show up at the bus stop, you have no way of checking the schedule. And that is not acceptable to me, and it probably shouldn't be acceptable to you. We need real schedules that have dates and times on them at the bus stops. That's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in council? Oh yeah, one more in council chambers. I don't have any hands online right now, so.
John Redmond, I'm a resident of PA, been here for about 5
Sorry, John,
years.
can you start while you're at the microphone so that people online can hear?
John Redmond, I've been a resident of PA for about 5 years. Thank you. I had a presentation planned, but somebody stole my thunder. I'm just going to read something from a social media blog that you need to hear. This is Mr. Jesse Farmer. He's a strong proponent of right-wing politics here in the county, and he made a comment on tonight's meeting. Not a comment, a post, actually. Port Angeles City Council meeting is going on right now. Go there and yell at them. Make them very uncomfortable. Understand that these people aren't necessarily careerists like French and Barry. They have other jobs. They get a stipend, and their power is fairly limited. You can apply social pressure on them that French, etc., are less susceptible to because they have less at stake in creating a homeless crisis for profit and career advancement. Some want to, though. Go there right now. This was posted 9/1/1916 hours. He goes on in the comments to say, go bang these weak. Anybody here opposed to profanity?
Yeah, please just tell us that it's profanity.
Anybody here, excuse me, go bang on these weak blanks. Trust me, they'll crumble. This is the same guy that scared the crap out of Allison Berry. This is how things are operating in our city right now. We are devolving into a condition of vigilante justice when these people don't get what they want. And they've acted on it, and they got away with it. Okay? I looked up the relevant statutes under the revised code. This post is a crime. I guess it's up to the chief what he wants to do about it. I don't want to see this city fall into a state of vigilante justice. I do not. That's all I've got.
Thank you. We do not have any. Oh, also, I just want to clarify that the profanities are a matter of the decorum of our rules of procedure. So that's the only reason why I asked for that word to not be read. I do not have any hands online, so we are adjourned. Oh, do you want to speak? Go ahead. Sorry, I said it too soon.
Anyway.
We can't hear you until you're at the microphone, so you need to come all the way up and then you can speak.
I was sad that I actually missed the overdose awareness thing because I do think that people need to have their voices heard. They need outlets. They need outlets to grieve over a family member, voice all the angst and the anxiety. And I had a person that lost her child that it was a matter of communication. It was a communication issue why the daughter actually, was lost when she looked at it because she actually realized that had she shared her own experiences with the same substance and had knowledge of who, what, and where, and all kinds of things, had she just had open discussion and such with that with her child, that could have been avoided. And that was actually made her more sorry than the actual event. And I was sitting there and I just started noting things that go with the overall thing. Well, it's really hard to, and that's what's made people's opinions so staunch is that when you lose a child or you lose a family member and you got to have something to blame, you blame the substance, not really kind of the underlying cause or that someone could have been there for them or that there's a greater education of the different kinds of brains and neurology and stuff that they're learning. But the thing is that the greater oppression from the drug war actually kind of is a huge thing too that needs to be noted. So they need to be acknowledged, those deaths, but it causes more deaths than all our wars put together because it creates no generational wealth, because the parents, they can't get back up out of some of that. They've got records and they've got all this thieving going on. We've got trash left everywhere. And as someone may have alluded to, that's not all the homeless leaving that stuff. I've talked to janitors and things where, and the sneaking suspicion is that it's actual other people that don't want the issue of drugs legalization or anything like that, like Ireland's gonna do, to be breached, that they leave the needles all over and they leave the trash and they trash those bathrooms that we spent so much money on. But then when you add up the separation caused by family members not, you know, just seeing each other, going and checking on each other, hiding from each other, the monetary issue that's spent on policing the thing and hiding from the thing. So the people protecting themselves, and then the other side of it, the people turning other people in, you know, kind of even like dividing family members because they're actually they've got to, you know, save themselves, or you know, they think someone they're lashed out. There is
Okay, ma'am, your time is up for tonight.
Okay,
It's just a 3-minute.
Like,
Yep.
it
Well,
creates
you're welcome
really,
to
really
come
bad
and,
poverty.
yeah, you're welcome to join us again. Thank you. All right. So that is the last public comment and we are adjourned. Thank you very much.